The princess kissed the frog. He turned into a prince, and they lived happily ever after.
Well, let's just say that it's sort of happily after for a long time. Okay, so they weren't so happy. In fact, they were miserable.
Stop sticking your tongue out like that.
Nagged the princess.
How come you never want to go down to the pond anymore?
Whined the prince. The prince and princess were so unhappy they didn't know what to do.
I would prefer that you not hop around on the furniture.
Said the princess.
And it might be nice if you got out of the castle once in a while to slay a dragon or a giant or whatever.
The prince didn't feel like going out and slaying anything. He just felt like running away. But then he reread his book, and it said right there at the end of the story, they lived happily ever after. The end. So he stayed in the castle and drove the princess crazy.
Then one day, the princess threw a perfectly awful fit. First, you keep me awake all night with your horrible croaking snore. Now I find a lily pad in your pocket. I can't believe I actually kissed your slimy frog lips. Sometimes I think we would both be better off if you bestow a little frog.
That's when the idea hit him. The prince thought.
Still frog? Yes, that's it.
And he ran off into the forest looking for a witch who could turn him back into a frog. The prince hadn't gone far when he ran into just the person he was looking for.
Miss Witch, excuse me, Miss Witch, I want you to help me.
So you're not looking for a princess to kiss and wake up, are you? Asked the witch.
No, I've already been kissed. No, I'm the frog. I've already been kissed. Actually, I was hoping you turned me back into a frog.
Are you sure you're not looking for a beautiful sleeping princess to kiss and wake up?
No, I'm the frog prince.
That's funny. You don't look like a frog. Well, if you're a prince, you're a prince. And I'll have to cast a nasty spell on you before Sleeping Beauty's 100 years are up. The prince didn't stick around to see which nasty spell the witch had in mind. He ran deeper into the forest until he came to a tiny cottage where he saw another lady who might help.
Oh, Miss Witch. Excuse me, Miss Witch. I wonder if you could help me. I'm a Prince Anne.
What did you say, Prince?
No, I mean yes. No. I'm not the prince looking for Sleeping Beauty, but yes, I'm the frog prince, and I'm looking for a member of your profession who would turn me back into a frog so I could live happily ever after.
Frog Prince, you say? That's funny. I thought frogs were little green guys with wet feet. Well, no matter. If you're a prince, you're a prince, and I can have a princess rescuing Snow White. Here, eat the rest of this apple.
The prince, who knew his fairy tales and knew a poison apple when he saw one, didn't even stay to say no thank you. He just ran deeper into the forest. Soon he came to a strange-looking house with a witch outside.
Hi, Miss Witch. I wonder if you could help me. I'm a frog.
If you're a frog, I'm the king of France, said the witch.
No, I'm not a frog. I'm a frog prince. And I needed a witch to turn me back into a frog so I could live happily ever after. Can you do it?
Said the prince in a long breath. The witch eyed the prince and licked her rather plump lips.
Why, of course, dearie. Maybe I'm right, and maybe I can feed you for lunch.
The prince stopped on the slightly gummy steps. Something about this house seemed very familiar. He broke off a piece of the windowsill. Gingerbread.
I don't know if you might be asking, but I ask you switch. But do you know any children by the name of Hansel and Gretel?
Why, of course, dearie. I'm expecting them for dinner. The prince who, as we said before, knew his fairy tales, went as fast as he could deeper into the forest. Soon he saw someone standing next to a tree. He walked up to her, hoping she wasn't a witch, for he'd quite have had his fill of witches.
Man, I need help.
Gosh, do you need it? Said the fairy godmother. You are the worst looking frog I've ever seen.
I am not a frog. I am the frog prince.
Said the prince, getting a little annoyed.
And he told me to be back into a frog, so I can live happily ever after.
Well, I'm going to see a girl I'm on my way to see a girl in the village about going to a ball, but I suppose I can give it a try. You know, I've never done frogs before.
And with that, the fairy godmother moved her magical wand and turned the prince into a beautiful carrot.
The prince couldn't believe his rotten luck. The sun went down, the forest got spookier, and the prince became more and more frightened.
Oh, what an idiot I've been. I could be sitting at home with a princess living happily ever after, but instead I'm stuck here in the middle of the stupid forest doing the stupid carriage. Now it's probably fall apart and live unhappily ever after.
The prince thought these terrible, frightening kinds of thoughts, and a few were too awful to tell, until far away in the village, the clock struck midnight. The carriage instantly turned back into its prince's former self, and ran by the light of the moon until he's safe inside his own castle.
Where have you been? I've been worried sick. You're 7 hours late, your dinner is cold, and your clothes are a mess.
The prince looked at the princess who had believed him when no one else in the world had. The princess who had actually kissed his slimy frog lips. The princess who loved him. The prince kissed the princess. They both turned into frogs.
And they hopped off happily ever after.